Hello everyone. In this video, what I want to do is cover a couple of programming problems in C++. The first program that I'm going to cover is to write a C++ program that displays this following pattern on the screen, and then we're going to save this file as the diamond.cpp. So the first thing that I'm going to do is open Visual Studio to get started. I am going to use Visual Studio Community 2019 for this project. So when I open Visual Studio, one of the first things I want to do is create a new project. And something that's very important to do in Visual Studio is to make sure you're using the proper one for what it is that you got to do, right? So which template are you going to use? There are very many templates in Visual Studio, which is super duper cool. So if you have something specific that you want to look for, as you know, they do multiple languages. So I'm going to just type in C++ here. And there are lots of different things you can do with C++. All I really need to do is use the console application. So see all the things with C++, a lot of them. So empty project, no, I'm going to do the console app. And I'm going to click on the C++. Now we need to give our project a name. Now what was that name? It was diamond.cpp. So I'm going to name it diamond.cpp. And you want to make sure that you know exactly where you're saving your location so that you can go and pull your file or zip it or unzip it later on. So let's change our location just because it's a little bit more difficult to move later on. So I'm going to go into here and I'm going to save it into this homework folder. Okay, I'm going to select that folder, so now I know exactly where it's going to be saved. And then when we're done, we have to remember to zip up our file when we're done. We also have to make sure that we close Visual Studio before we do that. So make note of where you're saving it and make sure that you know exactly where you're going to save it. Then I want you to go down into the right-hand side here and click Create, and it's going to open our environment. So here's our open C++ environment. You know, it's .cpp, so we want to make sure that we have that extension on our files. That means that we are in C++ and we are not in C# or any of the other languages. There are many languages within Visual Studio here, right? And so here we have a little bit of practice code already. Now, one of the issues that you may run across is if you're writing this program, then you're reading it from a book, right? So I took this from a specific book that is like 4th edition. And the issue with that is that they use Visual Studio 2008, and we are going to be using Visual Studio 2019 community version, and there's quite a bit of differences. For one thing, it's going to tell you in the book to just use cout, but because we are in this edition, we need to make sure that we also type in the std : before we put in the cout, or we're going to have issues. Let me just show you what that looks like. So you can see that I have the code here. We have to have the IO stream. Nice thing that Visual Studio is actually including the IO stream right there for you as you're getting started, right? We have our using namespace that's supposed to be in here, and I do not see it in here. So it might be something that you want to put in. Now, here's the difference. When I show you without that using namespace, if I put in, we want to use cout for our print command. And then we want to put in the less than sign twice, a quote. It does tell you in this book that you have to use a single quote. Just so you know, in 2019, in this version, double quotes is just fine. It will work just fine. So 1, 2, I'm going to go 3 over and then put an asterisk there. And then I want to do a new line. So the book will show you to go those little signs again. End L, that is the letter L, not I. And then you have to end it with the semicolon right here. Okay, so if we don't have this right here, or if we do have these little red lines right here, and we don't have the using namespace std, that's because we have to do this. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're telling the compiler what class or what namespace or where we're pulling, because we're going to, tell the compiler more than just the namespace and more than just, classes and so on and so forth. But we're telling it where we got it from, basically. And so if we don't put the std in there, then it's not going to work. Now, if we do put this using namespace here, std, all of a sudden you notice my lines disappear from here, and this actually works. So because we are using that class, we're forcing it to use the namespace std here. That makes it where we don't have to put as much typing on each and every single line. So next line. So we don't have to clarify where we got it because we're pulling it down to use it. Okay, so again, we're going to make like this little diamond, and I counted 3 spaces over last time. So I'm going to count 1 space over and then do an asterisk, and then maybe I'll count 2 spaces over. There we go, because we want to do a diamond. 2 spaces. Whoops, I hit 3. Asterisk. 2 spaces, an asterisk, we counted 3, and then skip a space, and then we're going to put another asterisk. Okay, I'm just going to make it look like a diamond here, and then we're going to do a new line again. C out again is like a print statement, remember? Okay, now I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. I'm just going to try to line this up to where it makes a diamond. Maybe I'll move this over one more. It's kind of hard to do, but there we go. See how it corrects my spaces for me as I go? So I'm going to put the asterisk in between. Oops, not the number, but hold your shift key down. And then we're going to do the bottom one. So try to put it like in between those 2 on the next one. So if you took the C sharp class last time, this is very similar. C out is similar to your right line. Okay, so the difference is you have to put in the new line character. We had write and write line, so it automatically entered a new line character. In C sharp, we have C out. And then if you want it to move to a new line, you need to either use the \n or you can use the ENDL. Either way, either will work. All right, now let's run this program. Well, my diamond's a little crooked, as you can see. But I made a diamond. So if yours turns out a little crooked, it's really okay. You know, you can put another space in here to try to line it up, maybe make it wider, okay? You can play with that if you want to. The main thing is that you get it out there. So that's a little bit more of a diamond there. So sometimes, see, you just have to kind of play with everything. All right. We forgot we probably need this return 0. Because what? Because we're in C++. Oops, ret run. Ret run. Is it like red ROM, red ROM? There we go. A little bit different time in there, a little bit better. Okay, so that's the first one that I was going to do. Hopefully you can get a chance to look and see how that looks before I go on, but you can always pause and screenshot or whatever it is that you need to do. So the next program that we were going to write is we have a C++ program. We're going to declare the variables that will hold an hourly wage, number of hours worked, and withholding percentage. Prompt the user to enter values for each of these fields. Compute and display net weekly pay, which is calculated as hours times rate minus the percentage of the gross pay that is withholding, and then save that file as netpay.cpp. Now, I just showed you how to go through and how to save the file, but I'm just going to show you the code for this. On this particular assignment, I'm not going to actually go through and name it. So you can see here, I've already done this in Notepad, and you can do this in Notepad actually if you wanted to do it from the ground up. You would have to include every single line, and then you would have to save this as a .cpp. So we would have to go File, Save As, and then you want to save it as in all files, and then name it .cpp. The cool part about not having to do it this way, though, is that you get to go in here. This gives you an option to actually run it and then play with that code. But then there's another site here too that I want to show you. It's called Tutorials Point. And with Tutorials Point, you can look up all kinds of cool things here. And it tells you, like what is done, like see out hello world, and that prints hello world. You have to have, it shows you using the namespace. It shows you all these things that you can do. And you can go by, see over here on the left, it's got all this kind of cool stuff too. But here's another thing that Tutorials Point has is it has this coding ground area. So if I go to the coding ground area and choose my programming language, then I can actually type it in that code and then run it in there as well. Okay, so I see a Python. It says it's available for 75 plus languages. How cool is that? So you could go to this coding ground and find whatever. My page is not loading very quickly. I apologize. I might be having some internet issues, but you find the code that you're going to be coding in. Okay, there's all kinds down here. It seems like they should have a search, but I see C++ right here, so I'm going to grab this C++. So I apologize. Hang on one moment. So I got my page to load and I find C++ right here and I'm going to click on that. And then this is what you have. So you could take this, you could absolutely run this. So you want to click the execute button right here. And then you can see the results over here. So this is another program that you could play with and practice your code in, just to let you know that it belongs here, it is here. And you can actually, save your project, you can share your project, and undo, redo, all of those good things, okay? So, oh my goodness, you could get all that stuff to actually work here. And then you can see also here, so if I put this in as a comment where it can't see it and then I execute it, now it's going to have all kinds of problems with the C out because I didn't have the std : right here, right? And then std : right here, and then see, now I can run it and you can see it works perfectly. So little things that you can play with and try to figure out. Just a very cool site that I wanted to show you. And something else I want to show you too is, how I just commented that out. When you're trying to test something, don't just take it out and then try to put it back in. Like, comment it out first. Make sure you can work without that being there before you actually remove it, because you can save yourself a ton of time later. Okay, so back to this tutorial, and we are going to again calculate this net pay. So the first thing we have to do is declare the variables that we're going to use, right? And so the type is the double type. We're going to use hourly wage, hours worked, weekly pay, and PCT withholding. Okay, we have we can do this because all of these are going to have the double type. So instead of having to go double hourly wage, new line, double hours worked, new line, double weekly pay, new line, double PCT withholding, we can put it all in one line. We have double hourly wage, hours worked, weekly pay, PCT withholding. Make sure to end that with a semicolon so you don't get a syntax error. Okay. We're going to use C out to ask the user to enter their hourly wage. Okay, so please enter, no, hourly wage, not hours worked. Sometimes you have to go back and look at the program. So, okay, so we have to ask them, we have to figure out what to do. And any of these things like this too, don't feel bad if you want to use Raptor first. Make sure that you're lining the program up properly and that everything is going to work before you do it. So the first thing we're going to ask for, though, is we're going to ask the user to enter the hours worked. Now, C out is used to print something to the screen, right? So to get something from the user, we want to use C in, and our greater than less than sign changes. So we have a less than sign for out, and then we have the greater sign for something that we're trying to bring in. Okay. And here is where we're going to use this hourly wage variable. We want to make sure we spell it the same every time we use it, right? Now we're going to ask the user to enter the hours that they worked. And I noticed that I did it again. I'm just all about those hours that we worked, right? So up here needs to be wages. Okay. And then hours worked. I work a lot of hours. Maybe that has something to do with it. Okay, so now that we've asked the user to enter something in again, of course, we need to use cin as well. And then this is going to be the hours worked variable. Okay. And now we're going to have another printout. Please enter percent withholding. Probably should have a little space in here so that it's not running right into the edge. So there's hourly wage, hours worked, as you can see. This gets underlined if you don't spell it correctly. I've already designated the variable right here, but then when I come down here, I say, oh, I'm going to use this variable, but I didn't do it correctly, did I? We have to make sure that we spell that variable the same way every single time. So this is one reason why we come up with our scheme or our plan on how we're going to use, which variables we're going to use, and we lay that out first. Okay, so now that we've done the withholding part, I'm going to do cin percent PCT withholding. And you notice IntelliSense is so smart. It brings up the currently created variable. You can double click on that variable. Boom, you are all set. Okay, so we did all of our inputs. Now we have to work on our processing. So what do we have to do to process? We're going to figure out what the weekly pay is. So that's going to be your hourly wage multiplied by the hours worked. And every statement instruction with a semicolon, right? Then we have to figure out if there's going to be a percentage, right? So weekly pay is also going to equal, once we figured out the hours worked, then we're going to take weekly pay and use it again. So weekly pay equal weekly pay, okay, because we have this value in here, hours wage by time hours worked. That's the value in weekly pay right now. Now we're going to take that value and we're going to subtract withholding Okay, now hopefully it makes sense to you why we have the PCT withholding times weekly pay in parentheses. We want that to happen first, right? Because we determine the hourly wage times the hours worked. We have an amount in weekly pay. Now, the withholding is going to be a percentage of that weekly pay. So we want to do that first. We want to multiply that first and then subtract that from the value that's in our weekly pay. Next, we're going to print that out. Input, process, and then what? Output. And look at this. Remember, we learned that we really should not put symbols inside anything else that we're trying to print out, right? Unless we have it in the quotes, because if we tried to put it within our weekly pay variable, that would not work at all. It would give us a ton of syntax errors. So, and then we're going to end the line, ENDL. Okay. And when you think that you have everything done, just check for any red squiggly lines and things like that to make sure you have everything spelled. And then let's run the program. So it's going to say, please enter hourly wages. Say we make $15 an hour. And the hours worked is 40. And we're at a 30% withholding. So remember when you're doing this, you're going to have to go 0.30 because you're doing percentage, right? So the net pay is $420 a week. Yay! All right, guys, so that's how you do that program. Enjoy this video. If you have any questions for me, please let me know. Have a great day, everyone.